The one lab number you should trust first. If you have a real lab A1C, that should lead the long-range glucose conversation before estimated A1C, GMI, average glucose, or a single home reading. The screen examples in this video use the 1-year mock data file included with the app by Werner Tools and Werner, so what you see here is a workflow demonstration, not a claim about your own medical record. The app's role is to put the latest lab value first, then show the home-based estimates underneath as supporting context. That hierarchy matters because the supporting numbers are useful, but they are not the same thing as an actual reported lab A1C. Start by entering the real lab result. The workflow starts in the lab entry screen. This is where you record the date, the A1C value, and the fasting glucose value when you have them. That step matters because the app cannot prioritize the real lab number unless the lab result is actually in the file. Once it is entered, the app can place the lab value against estimated A1C, average glucose, and same-day glucose reading comparisons. Without the lab entry, you are left with home-based estimates only. With it, you can tell the app which number is truly measured and which ones are interpreting the record around it. The report tells you the hierarchy immediately. The updated report viewer makes the rule explicit. Near the top, it says to use lab values first when available, and then it surfaces the latest lab values line before the home-based estimate section. That is the right reading order. Instead of making you decide whether estimated A1C or GMI should outrank the lab, the report tells you the answer directly. The lab belongs first. The monitor-based and estimate-based numbers are useful because they add pattern context, but they do not replace the most recent actual lab result. Why the lab A1C should lead the longer range story. For the longer glucose story, the lab A1C is the number to trust first when you have it. The estimate line is still useful, but the plot makes clear that it can differ from the actual lab result. In the sample screen, the estimated A1C sits below the lab A1C, and the tooltip labels the gap directly. That is exactly why the app treats the lab value as primary. The estimate helps you see trend direction between lab dates. The lab A1C tells you what the measured benchmark actually was on the date that matters. Where fasting lab glucose fits in the hierarchy. Fasting lab glucose still matters, but it answers a narrower question. It is a same-day snapshot rather than the broader long-range picture that lab A1C is often used to represent. The report viewer and notes make that split clear. Lab fasting glucose is excellent for comparing a same-day home reading against the lab draw. But if you are asking which number should lead the longer-range glucose status discussion when both are present, the app's workflow still treats the lab A1C as the first number and uses fasting lab glucose as a supporting point of comparison. Why the estimates still matter after the lab value comes first. Putting the lab A1C first does not make the supporting estimates useless. Average glucose, GMI, and estimated A1C help explain how the home record is lining up with the lab history and whether the trend between lab dates looks stable, improving, or drifting. In the sample screens, the app shows agreement labels and percent variation for those relationships. That is the right use case. Let the estimates add context around the real lab number instead of forcing them to compete with it for the top spot. Read the analysis block after the lab line, not before it. The block detail view shows the same hierarchy inside the selected range. It places the latest lab values in range near the top, then follows with blood pressure, glucose, weight, and the A1C, glucose, and labs comparison section. This matters because it keeps the report honest. Instead of being distracted by a flattering estimate first, you see the actual lab result and then read how the home estimates compare. That is the workflow you want before a doctor visit or before making assumptions about how well the home record is matching reality. Use this hierarchy before the doctor visit, not in the waiting room. This is especially useful before a doctor visit. The doctor visit workflow exists so you can prepare the report, set the time window, and save the exact version you reviewed before the appointment starts. The point is to walk in already knowing which number should lead the glucose discussion. If a recent lab A1C is present, that is the number. The rest of the report helps you ask better follow-up questions about trend, agreement, and what changed between lab dates, instead of wasting the visit debating whether an estimate should outrank the actual lab. What this app can prove, and what it cannot. The right conclusion is disciplined. This workflow can show you how a recent lab A1C, fasting lab glucose, home readings, average glucose, GMI, and estimated A1C fit together in one organized report. It cannot replace a clinician's interpretation or turn the home-based estimates into official lab results. Some gaps between the lab and the estimates may come from timing, sparse data, missing post-meal readings, or other measurement limits. So the best use case is to let the app keep the hierarchy straight and make the follow-up discussion more precise. About the app, privacy, and where to get it. Therapy Impact and Glucose Analyzer is by Werner Tools and Chris Werner. It is a Windows desktop application for personal tracking of blood pressure, glucose, weight, medications, and dated lab results. Privacy is straightforward because the workflow is built around local files on your computer, and the app does not upload your readings, reports, exports, or backups to cloud services. The full app can be obtained on Etsy for $9.95. Use the link shown on screen, etsy.com/listing/451-336-5729, or scan the QR code shown here.